Hello and welcome back to another ASMR vlog where I'll be taking you to the Château de Versailles. It's a very famous and one of the most visited castle in the world. I think it's the second most visited in the world, after the Prague castle. So I'm taking you on this journey with me where I'll be talking a bit about history of the castle, why it's such a well-known castle, who was living there, and a few stories also about the gardens, the Jardin à la Française. So we woke up early because we were staying in Paris, as you've probably seen in a previous vlog, and I wanted to give a big walk to Mocha. And then we were on our way to the castle, which is about an hour away from Paris. You take the train and the subway and then you arrive in Versailles, which is a smaller, very quiet and bourgeois city. And there it is, behind cars and buses, you can see the beautiful Château de Versailles with a beautiful statue of the King Louis XIV. So Versailles is one of the most famous palaces in the world. It's known for its beauty in royal history and his extraordinary architecture. It became famous largely thanks to the King Louis XIV, who was also known as the Sun King, Roi Soleil in French, and he transformed a simple hunting lodge into this symbol of absolute power and luxury. So today, Versailles isn't only a palace, it's also a museum and a historical monument, and one of the most visited places in France, if not the most. So first, let's talk a bit about what was Versailles before it was actually this big castle and places of luxury. Before becoming a palace, it was not considered a special place at all. It was mostly forests, fields and marshy lands outside of Paris. And in 1623, the King Louis XIII built a small hunting lodge here. At the time, it was simply a quiet place where he could hunt and escape from Paris. And no one can imagine that the small building would eventually become one of the most famous places in the world. So we just walk through the hallway with all the statues, and there it's a mini Versailles maquette. And as you can see, it was extremely busy, which I will be talking about later. There you can see a huge painting of Roi Soleil, Louis XIV, who made that place this symbol of power. So basically everything changed in 1661 after the death of Cardinal Mazarin. Louis XIV decided to rule France personally. He wanted to create something unlike anything Europe had ever seen. So this is one of his desk, which is made of oak, coniferous wood, ebony, and marquetry of brass and engraved red tortoise shell. Sorry. So Louis XIV wanted to create something bigger, something that would become not simply a residence, but something very famous that wasn't being seen anywhere else in Europe. So several famous artists and architects worked on the project. The architect Louis Deveau helped design the palace. The landscape architect André Le Nôtre created the gardens, and the painter Charles Lebrun designed much of the interior decoration and painted many ceilings. As you can see in the castles, there's a lot of wonderful painted ceilings. Absolutely incredible. The construction continued for decades, and during major period more than 30,000 workers were involved. So the first part of the visit is a lot of paintings and the apartments of the kings and also his wives. So this was the king's bedroom, and that's Louis XIV. It's just magnificent and so luxurious. It's almost a bit much. Not a big fan. And that's the room where the throne was seated, and where he would be most of the time, sitting. And there we arrived into the Hall of Mirrors. It was built between 1678 and 1684, and it contains 357 mirrors facing large windows overlooking the gardens. Today mirror seems ordinary, but during the 17th century they were luxury objects and extremely expensive. And France wanted to compete with Venice, which was famous for mirror production. So the sunlight is entering through the windows and creates an endless reflection across the room. And the ceilings were painted and created by Charles Lebrun. These paintings were celebrating Louis XIV and his victories. And they were not simply decorations, they were political messages designed to glorify the king. And that's the view on the gardens. So on May, the 6th of May, 1682, Louis XIV officially moved the royal court and government to Versailles. So this is the private bedroom of the king. Very goldy, not very minimalist. That was quite busy. That's the thing too. It's a lot of people. It was a sunny day on a Saturday, so I wasn't expecting anything else. And so from that day on May, the 6th of May 1782, Versailles became the political center of France. Life here were followed extremely strict rules and ceremonies. Living close to the king was considered a privilege, and some nobles competed for very small honors, such as handing the king his gloves, holding candles, and helping him get dressed. People could even watch the king eat during official ceremonies, and his daily life itself became a spectacle. And yes, some private moments, such as going to the loo, were not completely private. People could look at him. So the room that we just saw was the coronation room. You can see a few things about that if you want to press pause and read a little bit. It's a bit more specific on history, if you're interested. After Louis XIV died in 1715, Versailles remained a royal residence. Louis XV and later Louis XVI continued to live there, and Louis XVI lived here with Queen Marie Antoinette. But Marie Antoinette often preferred quieter places, away from the formal court life. After walking around the apartments of the king, and because it was very busy, we decided to stop in the little coffee that's inside Versailles, which is called Angelina. It's a very famous chocolate coffee place in Paris. You can buy different things, obviously a lot of souvenirs if you want to bring something home. And it's also known for its Mont Blanc cake, which is made of cream and chestnut cream and meringue, which is really good. I really like that little take, especially in winter. That's a bit of story about Angelina, which was created Rue de Rivoli in 1903 in Paris. And there's now a few Angelinas in Paris. So I think the Mont Blanc pastry, the chestnut pastry is about 10 euros. The hot chocolate, which is the emblematic drink that I was taking when I was younger with my dad, is 10 euros. And I had a matcha, which was about 10 euros too. So quite an investment. During summer you have to pay also for the entrance in the garden, but during winter you can just go in the garden even if you don't even go to the castle in Versailles, which is really nice because it's quieter, it's gorgeous and beautiful, and you can go for free in the gardens and walk around. I wouldn't suggest to pay for the Versailles gardens in summer, because if you pay just for the tickets you can access to the whole castle, and you can also access to le Trianon, which I would be talking a bit about later, but is completely enough for a whole day of visiting and walking around. So after this little break we were feeling ready to go back to the crowd. As I was telling you, it was really crowded. So that's one of the little quieter places where the tourists cannot go, and you can see the cook and the waiter from Angelina just taking little breaks. And then we're back on our feet to see the rest of the castle. And this is the Gallery of Battles. It's one of the largest spaces created by Louis Philippe. It was created between 1833 and 1837. The gallery is around 120 meters long and contains 33 enormous paintings showing French military victories from the year 496 to 1809. Yeah, like 1809. And interestingly, Napoleon appears there too. Although Napoleon never lived in Versailles as his main residence, he became part of the story displayed inside the museum. You'll see. And this big room with all this painting was linked to the end of Royal Versailles in 1789 during the French Revolution. The crowds marched to Versailles and the royal family was forced to leave. Versailles was no longer the center of power, and then it became a museum. Many people believed that all the paintings inside Versailles were always there, but that's not actually true. In 1833, the King Louis Philippe decided to transform Versailles into a museum, and the museum officially opened on June the 10th in 1837. The mission was written as "To all the glories of France," because France had experienced revolution, empires, changing government, and political divisions. And Louis Philippe wanted to create something that could unite the country instead of celebrating only kings or only revolutionaries. He wanted Versailles to tell the entire story of France. And so that's Napoleon, a very famous painting of him crossing the Alps for the first time in the 1,800 years. I'm really bad with the numbers, sorry. And so this new side of Versailles becoming a museum created by Louis Philippe explains why there are giant paintings throughout Versailles today. The paintings represent kings, military victories, historical events, revolution, important people from French history. Many people in the paintings were real people. However, many scenes were painted centuries after the events happened. So artists often used old text, portraits, historical documents, and imagination. But in some ways, these paintings are similar to historical films. They are artistic reconstructions of the past. So after visiting Versailles, we walked to the Trianon. The Trianon is about 20-minute walk away from Versailles, and it comes with the ticket that you buy include the Trianons. Le Grand Trianon was built by Louis XIV as a more private retreat away from the court. Later, Le Petit Trianon became closely associated with Marie Antoinette. So that's the entrance. It looks like you're in the countryside. It's quite a walk between Versailles until the Trianon. It's like 20 to 30 minutes walk. And you can imagine the kings and queens. Most of the times it was the queen who would go in a more countryside place, which was the Trianon, and she would walk these paths and roads, probably with a carriage with horses, to go in this more quiet place. And so Marie Antoinette used to go there, but a lot of queens were going there too. She used it as a place to escape royal ceremonies. She was enjoying there a quieter life. And so that's the Queen's Hamlet. That's Marie Antoinette herself who did a reconfiguration of the Trianon gardens. And she creates more of an English gardens style. It does not belong to any particular style. It's combining various influences from rural architecture, but it does succeed in creating a sense of aesthetic coherency, obviously. And it's divided in 3 different distinct spaces, which is the windmill, the boudoir, and the Queen's house. So the Trianon really look like an artificial countryside village designed for relaxation. A queen could temporarily experience a simpler environment, far from the court's rules. And so, after the revolution in 1789, it was the end of Versailles and the great transformation that I was telling you about earlier. And I don't know if it's because the Trianon was created by women for women, but I do feel a lot better in this environment. There's just a more calm and feminine energy in the Trianon comparing to Versailles, and I could totally relate to them wanting to, escape a bit. And you can feel a more seeking for power energy into Versailles comparing to the Trianon, which I believe a long time ago men were seeking for power and women were more quiet, more calm, seeking for this calmness, this inner life, which is maybe still a bit the case these days, unfortunately, for some men. After the kings, Versailles later witnessed another major event in the world history. In 1919, after World War I, the Treaty of Versailles was signed in the Hall of Mirrors, the same room that once represented royal power became the setting for an international peace agreement, which is nice. I think I like that a bit more than, the hall with all the battles. Now, as we walk through the Trianon garden, I'm going to tell you some fun facts and architecture facts about Versailles. Versailles was designed to impress everyone. Today, the palace contains around 700 rooms and more than 2,000 windows. Louis XIV associated himself with Apollo, the god of sun, which is why he became known as the Sun King, le Roi Soleil. The gardens themselves were engineering masterpieces. But there was one problem. The fountains needed enormous amounts of water, and there often was not enough water for all of them to work at once. And so workers on Versailles were sometimes forced to secretly turn fountains on only when the king was approaching, and turned them off after he passed by, which is kind of funny when you think about it. So even luxury had practical problems back then. Look how quiet the Trianon garden is. It was really a joy to walk around there and to really, take time. After this big walk around Versailles and the Trianon, we bought a very expensive sandwich at Angelina, and we went under a tree to sit. Even in such a crowded place like Versailles on a Saturday in summer, we found a quiet place and we had a nice camembert sandwich. And I did a little interview of my partner and what he felt about Versailles. So I'm leaving you with that for the next few minutes. Je pense que ça enregistre. Je vais monter un peu le son. Du coup, tu veux parler en français, c'est ça?
Oui, je préfère.
D'accord. So we are going to be asking to Theo. Can you go a bit this way? So at the moment we are in the gardens around Versailles. We took a little break to have a little, give it to me, coffee. Oh, the coffee's making its own noise. And we had a sandwich, and now we're going to ask Theo his immediate thoughts on Versailles, because it was his first time here, and we've seen Versailles plus the Trianon, the small one and the big one, and we're gonna ask him his thoughts. So we arrived today at 10:30 in the morning, and it's 3 p.m. now, and we've been walking, 20,000 steps. So what are your first thoughts about Versailles? So he's gonna reply in French, and I'll put subtitles. Maybe I won't, and you'll have to practice your French.
Ça fait longtemps que je rêve de visiter Versailles, depuis que j'ai 18 ans, parce que c'est vraiment un lieu magnifique qui représente une grande partie de l'histoire de France. Et je dois avouer que j'ai été un petit peu déçu par le château de Versailles en lui-même. Premièrement parce que c'est assez petit comme visite, c'est vraiment très court. tour en une petite heure, je pense. On peut prendre beaucoup plus de temps, mais il y avait tellement de monde, tellement de touristes, c'est un des lieux les plus visités au monde, que c'est difficile de prendre le temps de contempler tous les tableaux qui représentent l'histoire de France, le règne de Louis XIV, jusqu'aux conquêtes de Napoléon Bonaparte.
Sorry, so the entry is $30. Would you say that it's worth it?
Je pense que ça vaut largement le prix. Ce qui est dommage, c'est que les conditions de visite en pleine saison touristique, un samedi, sont vraiment pas idéales. Mais s'il y avait 2 fois moins de monde, ça vaudrait largement le prix. Surtout qu'on peut ensuite accéder au jardin et au Trianon. Et là, c'est vraiment magnifique parce qu'on a plus d'espace. Et comme on a plus d'espace, on peut laisser son imagination se promener un peu dans l'histoire. Et on n'a pas besoin de se faufiler entre des personnes, entre des groupes d'élèves, d'étudiants et de se sentir oppressé dans les salles.
Pressé est un mot un petit peu fort, vous ne pensez pas? Okay, thank you. If you could describe Versailles in 3 words, what would you say? You can have a little think about it. And while you think about it, I'm going to give my review on Versailles. I've been here, I think, 5 times in my life, maybe more. But I was always coming during the week because I used to work. I hope you're thinking about your 3 words and not looking at your messages. And the last time I came, it was September 2020, so it was COVID-19 and the lockdown and everything, and so it was pretty empty because there were no tourists, nobody, and 95% of the people coming here are not French, so it was really empty. So I had this sort of memory of it being quite, big and empty. So it was pretty crowded today, and I still liked it because I really like the old times and the paintings, and obviously the architecture is really beautiful. But I would say that on a pretty day like this, when it's like 25 degrees and hot and sunny, the gardens are a lot more pretty and nice. It's quite windy. Okay, do you have your 3 words? Oui. Okay. You can say your 3 words in English.
Ah, je les connais pas en anglais.
Okay, you can say it in French then.
Merci. Le premier, c'est évidemment démesuré. J'ai pas besoin d'expliquer pourquoi.
Non, effectivement.
Le deuxième, c'est... je sais pas comment dire. Historique. Parce que c'est vraiment un voyage dans le temps. Et le troisième, c'est inachevé. Parce qu'en fait, on peut pas tout voir en une seule fois. Tout est parfaitement achevé dans le château et les jardins. Tout est magnifique. Mais c'est tellement grand qu'on peut pas faire le tour en une journée.
Il faudrait presque y vivre quelque temps.
Oui, j'ai d'ailleurs décidé de m'y installer et de me proclamer roi de France de droit divin. Vous pouvez m'appeler d'ailleurs Louis XXIV.
Il y en avait 23 des Louis.
Non, mais j'aime bien le chiffre 24.
D'accord. Est-ce que l'année 2024 te manque?
Oui, c'était une plutôt bonne année 2024 quand j'y repense. Il y a eu pas mal de découvertes assez agréables et c'est vrai que c'était une année de changement.
Est-ce que ça te rend triste de savoir que tu ne verras plus jamais de temps 24 dans ta vie, sachant que c'est ton nombre préféré?
Non, je verrai forcément le nombre 24 apparaître quelque part, sur le prix d'une caisse de supermarché, ce genre de choses. Il faudra être attentif à ce que j'appelle la poésie du monde.
Merci beaucoup. C'était les chroniques de
Louis XXIV.
Okay, do we have something to add? No, not much to add. We had a nice sandwich. That was quite expensive. And now we're chilling a little bit, and then we're gonna head back to the train, and we're gonna grab the train, and we're gonna go back to Paris, and then we might go out this afternoon. Or this evening.
On profite parce que...
Meanwhile, we're enjoying because the subtitles.
Attends, on profite parce que...
Ça va partir en ligne, je te préviens.
On profite parce que la ville de Paris, c'est beaucoup de monde. Et là il fait de la nature, c'est un parc naturel. Et la nature, ça nous manque beaucoup.
It's true. We don't live in Paris anymore, and when you get used to a smaller city, you feel quite easily that you're away from the nature when you're in the center of Paris. That's a true thing. So we're really enjoying right now being in the nature. Just look at that. In the middle of the field, just like two little cows. Okay, you want to say goodbye to the camera?
Au revoir.
Et à bientôt pour de nouvelles.
Ça va.
Ciao. Allez, la suite dans un prochain numéro. Thank you so much for listening to us being a bit silly and talking about Versailles. Today Versailles remains a place where every room tells a story. It's a very historical place. A former hunting lodge became a royal palace, then a museum, and eventually one of the most visited historical sites in the world. And I think it's worth the visit, but I would recommend during winter and probably during the week as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. We walked more than 33,000 steps on that day, so